Hello everyone, I wanted to touch base with you via this video announcement and cover a few points that we need to clarify for some folks as we move forward. Okay, let me show you exactly where we are, what we're talking about, and get you caught up just a little bit with where we are, maybe some challenges that that I saw, some things that I we need to take into consideration. Okay, so I'm going to go down here where it says Start Here. You'll see a similar link. Okay, some of you might have been a little. I think some of you are a little confused about the purpose of these assignments, the context we're in. So I just wanted to go over this with you just a little bit. Most of you did very excellent work on second week discussion. For some, there were some challenges, and I wanted to address those for you because I saw kind of recurring patterns. First of all, here's what you have to do, okay? You have to write 1 or 2 paragraphs, okay? A discussion is not a place for us to air our opinions. Many people wrote their what they thought, their thoughts about the topic. Well, that's okay, but you need to engage. You do need to engage your thoughts, but you need to filter your thoughts through the written material. So what do you need to do? Okay, you need to you should be finishing your initial post. I know that I'm not holding people to this by Thursday at 11:59, right? A lot of people aren't. If you do that, that gives you a chance to respond to your classmates, and we'll talk about that in a second. Consider content from other parts of the course when appropriate. Use proper citation methods for your discipline when referencing scholarly or popular sources. If we come from different disciplines, the standard citation format, you put a reference at the end of your initial post, is APA format, American Psychological Association format. I'll show you how to get to that in a moment. But then you need to respond to at least 2 of your classmates. Okay? So you need to respond to them by Sunday, or else I cannot take late work on discussions. And I want you to take a moment on your own time and review the discussion rubric criteria. All right. Okay. So I want to discuss a little bit. How I approached power and poverty. Okay. When it's said to analyze what you believe are the root causes of poverty, right? Yeah, they talk about the individual, right? But, volunteering isn't really going to do much in terms of addressing root causes of poverty, right? What can an individual do? Yes, that might be a nice response, but is that going to change effectively what we're thinking about when we think about poverty? Okay? So there are structural causes of poverty, right? Social structure are large-scale patterns. So if you a lot of people gave me stories about, well, people just need to know how to manage their money better. If you have a terminal illness and you're poor and you're working 2 jobs, there's no amount of managing one's money that one could do, right? That would improve their situation. That is almost like, well, 19th century level thinking about the issue. And if people just stopped at that doesn't address the fact that someone benefits from people being poor. Okay? This is not a fair or a just or, a balanced society necessarily. Right? Okay? So when people brought up policy and voting, that was a correct answer. Okay? So by comparing and contrasting poverty in different communities, for example, there are larger proportions. We need to know the difference between a proportion and a raw number. So within groups, if I compared Hispanics or African Americans within groups, there are larger proportions within those groups of poverty, and we could use racism as a possible explanation for those poverty rates within those communities. Yes, structural racism. But there are greater numbers of whites, okay? So, what are processes that might explain poverty for these different groups, okay? You can't just tell me that the gender gap necessarily, that's a consequence of, not an explanation for example, why women are in poverty. If we look, for example, at groups in a little fine-grained manner, Caucasian women, for example, or whites, women are doing substantially better than men in certain other race groups, right? So that's kind of a consequence of, not an explanation for poverty, right? A large measure of why women are in poverty is we have no structural response to the need for child care. This is an advanced, industrial democracy, capitalist democracy. And in other countries and you do well to compare this country, not with the poorest countries in the world, right? But with other countries that are similar to this one, when you're making this. So, when I asked about, when I graded you sometimes, maybe, I challenged you a little bit, and I want to go down and now and look at week 3, since we're in the week 3. Drug use and legalization. Okay? Now, please don't tell me that drugs are bad, or all, you've got to think a little more systematically, and please read the chapter before you respond. I will know. The people who decided that they didn't really feel like using a reference or tried to write me into the ground, no. You need to edit your work when you write, please, and respond to the question. What is the question here? Okay. Most states have legalized medicinal marijuana, and around half have legalized recreational use of the drug. There is a popular view that minority communities are more prone to drug abuse than are whites. The data, however, indicate that African Americans and Hispanics are less likely. That's the data. That's not my opinion. That's not how I feel about it. That is what the evidence says. And you must pay attention to the evidence. The data indicate that African Americans and Hispanics are less likely to be serious drug users than whites. Okay? And there's a citation. Where's the citation? Right here. Okay? In your initial post, use one of the three major sociological theories to analyze drug use and drug legalization. And you can compare it. You can talk about your own personal view, but don't stop there. Don't stop by telling me what you feel about it. That's really not, that's not that really that important in this context. Okay? And so, basically, and again, I'm clicking on the discussion rubric. If you have any questions, you can go back and you can click on the discussion rubric, right? And it will tell you how you need to respond. But please respond to this thoughtfully, and please respond after having read the module material and the chapter. And if nothing else, please cite the chapter. Your opinion is not data. What you see maybe in your community is a starting off place, but it is not data about the millions of people who are addicted to drugs. Now, in terms of differences between communities, I would say that there's a larger number of interdiction or police action in minority communities that's outsized in terms of the actual drug use rates in those communities. Okay, there's data to indicate that, and there's also data to indicate that in some communities, depending on whether the community has resources or not, and that is a tax-based driven thing, that there's better access to treatment resources, for example. And that would mean, so what kind of communities are we talking about? Minority communities probably don't have the access when people in those communities might have a drug problem. Poor white communities, like Appalachia, for example, which I sit right now as I'm talking very close to where I live. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, right? They don't have access to resources. Okay, so consider this. Start thinking sociologically, not about how you feel, not about somebody in your family who might have had a problem. That's a starting off place, but we're trying to look at large patterns. What we're trying to do here is identify possible avenues for social policy. Many of you are going into human services. This is going to be a challenge for you. This is where sociology will inform what you do. You can't go into a human services context, I know from talking to my colleagues, even though I'm not involved in that myself, and go, well, my uncle had a drug problem and it was really sad for the family. Okay, that might be true. But that's not going to drive a policy decision, okay? That's the beginning of your thinking. You're going to have to present evidence, okay? This is an evidence-based assessment. So please keep this in mind moving forward, not only for these discussions, but for everything that you write in this class. Okay, thank you very much.